Everyone, I want to call the June 1st Village of East Dundee Board to order. We'll do roll call.
Trustee Guma, absent. Trustee Sauter,
Here.
Trustee Saviano,
Here.
Trustee Kunze,
Present.
Trustee Mahoney,
Here.
Trustee Oakman is absent. President Pearson.
Here. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 4, plus Dan is 5.
Anybody here for public comment? I know we got some others. Okay. Going once, going twice. The consent agenda, we'll have to pull out D. We're going to table that. So I will
We'll need a
entertain.
motion on that to postpone, but we can do the
We're
consent
not
agenda.
postponing it, we're just pulling
We're moving it?
Pulling it from the consent agenda.
We're removing it. So,
I will move to approve the regular village board meeting minutes dated May 18th, 2026. I will also move to accept the warrants list in the amount of $159,614.11. I will also move to approve an ordinance authorizing the annexation of certain property located west of Illinois Route 25 and north of Richardson Road into the corporate boundaries of the village.
Second.
any discussion?
Yeah, on item C, I just wanted to make sure I was clear that this is just cleaning up of something that was done years ago that wasn't recorded properly or wasn't completed properly?
Yeah, there was an annexation agreement, everything was all tied up with a bow, and somehow there was no ordinance that was ever passed to approve it. So, yes, it's just tying up a list.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Vote?
no other questions? Is there a second?
Yes, we have a second. Trustee Sauter,
Yes.
Trustee Saviano,
Yes.
Trustee Kunze,
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney,
Yes.
Okay. Other items, we have discussion and a presentation by the village's water treatment distribution.
Oh, no, aren't we gonna do item D?
We are not.
We are not.
Okay, postpone it.
Yes,
Okay.
motion.
Just
Bill?
removing.
Got it. Got it, okay.
Throw it in the trash.
Yes, good evening. I am pleased to introduce this important agenda item to discuss East Dundee's public water supply. Our public water supply is one that everyone who lives, works, and visits East Dundee uses on certainly a daily basis. Our objectives, staff and our consultants, have been and will continue to be to ensure the reliability of our water system, produce the highest quality of water for all users and potable uses, maintain compliance with all regulatory water quality requirements. Tonight's discussion and a presentation will include an overview of our public water supply, summary of our drinking water regulatory compliance, current status of our drinking water, recent improvements made to the treatment and distribution systems, costs associated with those improvements, current challenges associated with these systems, the fact that East Dundee is not alone in dealing with some of these challenges, mandated improvements in monitoring, and upcoming improvement projects to these systems. Joining us this evening are Dan Bounds and Caitlin Wright, both of whom are with Baxter and Woodman, and they will take us through the slideshow presentation. And a special thanks to them for developing the slideshow. Greg and I will certainly be here to contribute to the discussion as needed. And with that, I'll invite Dan to offer some opening comments on the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dan Bounds with Baxter & Woodman. I'm the village's point of contact, or primary point of contact for the work that we do for all of you. We've done decades of planning and engineering services, which we really value. We really appreciate it, and we do value the relationship that we have locally. Caitlin and I are both local, right out of the Crystal Lake office as well. So I have the actual slides on a flash drive. is it like 2 seconds to put these slides up, or should I just present it from the PowerPoint file?
We can try.
Okay.
I would suggest just trying your suggestion of, how you just do those little 3 dots on the side and
Yeah.
make it in presentation mode. Because it's the same presentation. Or did you make any changes?
There were some minor adjustments, but we could keep
From
either-
like 2 o'clock this afternoon?
We could do either one.
It's the same from 2 o'clock this afternoon.
That's the one we're using, so.
So this is a PDF, so
I can just scroll down through the pages.
yeah, I think that would be best. Sorry for that.
Sure, no problem. Let's
I swear
see.
you've done this in the past for us, Caleb.
There we go.
I swear maybe it was Caleb that did it, or maybe it's Bronco that did it in the past, but there's some way to get in presentation mode from the
Yeah.
PDF.
We're all good. So Caitlin's joining me for the presentation tonight. She's our water department manager for Baxter and Woodman, and together we're going to go through agenda kind of like Phil just described here. Overview of your water system as a whole, some of the regulations and current changes in those that are happening, recent system improvements, mandated improvements coming in the near future, and then some current challenges and upcoming needs as well. So when you take a glass of water from your tap, or you start that shower running at home, the water's journey starts in the ground. You are groundwater supplies here locally. And you've got 2 production wells, well number 5, well number 6 currently in service, and then also 2 emergency wells that get that water out of the ground and take it to your water treatment plant. Your water treatment plant has the capacity of 1.4 million gallons per day of treatment. That's that MGD acronym there, million gallons per day. Average production, though, is about 420,000 gallons of water per day that is treated for local residents, so not a small amount of water that's treated each day. After treatment, water storage occurs. We've got 2 elevated storage tanks in town, one on Route 25, one on Route 68. Both of those are 500,000 gallon above ground storage tanks. And then there's also the standpipe as well that provides some additional storage. And then after storage, there's the distribution system. We got 33 miles of water main and water distribution throughout the community that takes water to all of our homes, right to our taps. It's comprised of old cast iron mains and ductile iron mains, serving over 3,000 customers within the community. And if you think, the blue lines on the map illustrate all of those water mains, those water service lines that you have in town. If you think of all of those water mains as one thing, one asset, I estimate that's about $60 million asset that you've got underground that no one ever sees, but it's there and critically important to do the maintenance, do the rehabilitation that needs so that you can provide safe and reliable water to the residents in the community. With that, I'm going to let Caitlin get into some details on the current regulatory requirements that the city has, the village has to comply with.
Good evening, everyone. It's a bit of a change for me. Normally I'm here talking about lead water service lines, so this is a refresher to talk about something slightly different. So I'm not going to get into every sort of detail in that table, but what I want to use this table to do is to emphasize the amount of testing that happens for your water system. All community water systems are managed underneath the Safe Drinking Water Act, and that is enforced by the primacy agency for the state, that is Illinois Environmental Protection Agency here in Illinois. And the village is testing their water for a variety of different parameters, hundreds of different parameters on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual, multi-annual. Depends on the risk associated with that parameter. So for instance, when we're looking at water treatment, the village is adding chlorine into the water system. They are monitoring that daily, almost continuously, to make sure that we are working within the parameter that we need to work within. On a different note, when we're looking at, say, PFAS, which we'll talk about here in more detail later on in the presentation, that is regulated very differently and is looking at what is in the groundwater and is actually being tested on a multi-year cycle at this point in time. So these tests are happening frequently. They're happening throughout your distribution system, both at your source water, so testing at the water that's actually coming out of the wells, After your water treatment plant, it's being tested. Out in your distribution system, it's being tested, and at people's individual properties. Again, all depending on the parameter that we're looking at. And all of this gets reported back to the state. Now, through that reporting to the state, there's also a requirement to report back to consumers. All community water systems across the country are required to do what's called a consumer confidence report, a CCR for short. This previously was done annually. It is now shifting starting in 2027 and will happen every 6 months that a community has to report this. Consider it your report card for your water system. It's going to talk about your water source information, any detected contaminants, regulatory and compliance limits, what was met, were you within the regulation for a specific parameter, were you out of it, and also following up on that if there was any violations that had happened within that monitoring period. So the village's CCRs are available on the village's website. Any resident or anyone in the public can access these, and I think the past 2 or 3 years are presently available, and if anyone wanted to go further back, they could contact Public Works to receive that information. Now, water systems can receive a violation from IEPA based off of all of that testing that I mentioned earlier. And these violations can fall underneath what I'll deem as 2 categories. Health related, so that would be deemed almost like unsafe water. A parameter is out of what we would deem as safe, and you need to report that to the public. Then there's also what would be deemed as monitoring or reporting requirements, and that can be a violation. So for instance, a lot of the samples that are being taken are sent to a lab. If the lab doesn't submit it to the state in a timely manner, the community gets the violation, not the lab. So I want to emphasize that East Dundee has had no health-based violations. Now, I didn't go back 75 plus years, but in terms of recent years, there have been no health-based violations. Everything that is being reported to the state has been safe and within the parameters that we would expect to see from a water system. So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about what the village has done recently in terms of improvements. Now, bear with me, I did not bring my glasses, so I am going to look down to make sure I'm reporting on this information correctly. But as Dan noted earlier, the village maintains wells, a water treatment plant, elevated storage tanks, and a standpipe, as well as the distribution system as a whole. All of these assets have received some improvements over the course of the past few years. So well number 6 was actually brought online in 2019. It was constructed in 2008. We're going to talk about well number 6 later on in the presentation. Well number 5 was rehabbed back in 2022. And then there's been annual maintenance performed. Wells are tested and monitored at a set frequency, including the village's emergency wells, to make sure everything is operating as it should. The water treatment plant has had filter maintenance, which really is looking at the media that is being used to filter the water. There's also been additional softener maintenance at the treatment plant, and iron oxidation improvements. That was the addition of sodium permanganate, which helps, for lack of better words, helps consolidate iron within the water and allows it to fall out of solution, so it can actually be collected and removed from the water. Additionally, the elevated tanks and standpipes, when we look at those, the Route 25 tower just went through a repainting. I think we're all familiar with that and can see that. The standpipe is currently going through that process. So you can see here in the picture on the right, it is in need of some repainting. It is still structurally sound, but we definitely want to add some additional paint and rehab that. So that is underway at this point in time. The distribution system, Water Street Water Main was, had some improvements done back in 23, and I just drove down Water Street and saw the new paving that is happening, or just happened, so that's an exciting change for the village. There's been the lead service line replacement program that was initiated last year. The village did some lead service lines last year. We are in the process of designing and taking out this year's project. And we'll talk about some future projects up and coming. The village also has 6 auto flushers. What these are used for is they're put at the, what we would deem terminal or end of lines in the water system. So a water main that isn't looping around, it has basically a lack of flow. Its only flow is from the services that are pulling from it. Those auto flushers are put in those at the end of those to draw water and help keep that water moving. That helps with water quality, and we want to keep the age of water in the pipe reduced as much as possible. And then there's also pressure reducing valves. These are annually maintained. They go through an annual inspection process just to make sure that we are maintaining pressure within the system. All right, so some really legible, large numbers up on the screen here for you all this evening. What I want to highlight is that over the course of the past 4 years, 3 years, depends on how you look at the fiscal year. The village did a change in their fiscal year in 23/24, so the village has been increasing what they spend and invest in their water system. We have consistently seen the village looking to budget more for the water system and improve their assets. And I want to highlight that in the 25 to 28 strategic plan that the village put together, which, by the way, is a very nice looking strategic plan, the village calls out the need to address aging infrastructure. So I know it's front of mind. I know it's something that the village is invested in doing. And we see that also tracking with what's been spent historically, and we'll talk about what's planned for the future. So that's been tracking. Now, I frequently have been here to talk about lead service lines. I'm going to actually keep that to one bullet point here this evening, which is a shift. And we'll talk a little bit about PFAS. But across the state and across the country, communities are mandated to follow new regulations, and it's requiring action. So one of those is that lead service line replacement program. I do want to highlight that Illinois has recently adopted the most recent federal law, the U.S. lead and copper rule improvements. This is going to change sampling requirements again for staff. It is also reducing our timeline to execute replacements, and that's shifted down to a 10-year program. Next, I want to talk a little about PFAS. Now, it's a bit of the hot topic word. I'm sure you've seen it on the news, in articles, on social media. It is a family of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Please do not quote me on how to pronounce that because I butcher it every time. But this is a manufactured oil water-resistant compound. It is what we would deem forever chemicals in the industry. It does not break down. So we really liked this when we started manufacturing it because you could put it on pans and your food slides right off. You could put it on a jacket and the water repels off of the jacket. And it became a very popular thing to use. Unfortunately, what we didn't realize at the time, and when I say we, the industry producers of this, didn't realize at the time is that eventually sheds off and it ends up in our water system, right? You wash your clothes, you wash your dishes. Rainwater will wash away whatever you've sprayed with that anti-water resistant spray. So that all ends up back into our water system. US EPA has released a PFAS national primary drinking regulation. This was officially adopted by the state of Illinois this year. Now, I do want to make note that the federal law is now proposed to possibly change again. We're not sure how Illinois will address that since they've adopted the current law as it stands. But with that current law, it's a very, very, very low regulatory limit. So if this was seen in your source water, in the groundwater, it would require the village to take action. And by very small, I mean 4 parts per trillion. Envision 4 drops of water in an Olympic-sized pool. That is what we are looking for. If it exceeds that amount, that requires action by a community. What that action is public notification, increased sampling frequency. So if you don't see anything, you have to sample every couple of years. If you came across PFAS, you would have to sample quarterly. It also would require potential treatment plant upgrades to remove that PFAS. And it can be removed, and then it would have to be incinerated. It is an intensive process, but it is possible to be removed from the water system. So what this new regulation will require of the village, initial monitoring period for PFAS is happening presently and goes through April of 2027. The village previously tested for PFAS in 2021. You were a non-detect. You did not see any PFAS in the system. Now, surrounding communities also were non-detects, those that have reported. I think the closest neighbor, I think Elgin might have had a well that had PFAS in it, but immediately surrounding communities did not see PFAS. It is in the groundwater. We know it's in the groundwater. It can shift. But presently, the village has not detected it in the water system. For ongoing compliance, that monitoring would begin April 26th of 2027. So after all of the testing occurs across the nation, then we go into a monitoring period. Should a community discover that they have PFAS during the monitoring period or during this initial testing period, that would require compliance of implementing PFAS removal treatment. And so you would have to do upgrades to your water treatment plant in order to facilitate that. That would require to at least be beginning by April 26, 2029. So you would have to show the state that you are doing what you need to do to remove that PFAS. So outside of that mandated requirements that, again, all communities are having to navigate right now, the village does have some existing challenges within their system. In general, this is aging infrastructure. Portions of your distribution system, a large portion of your distribution was built in the pre and mid 1950s or 1900s. So pre-1950 on this map is shown in pink. And so you can see that far western portion of town was built somewhere between early 1900s and 1950s. The red, sort of in the central portion of town, was built during the 1950s. So you have water main that is pushing close to 100 years old, if not over 100 years old, for those early pre-1950 locations. Most of that is made of cast iron, as Dan noted earlier, and this can lead to rusty water, which would be seen at the consumer taps. Cast iron, as it gets older, builds up what's called tuberculation. It's not dangerous by any means, but it does create rust. Rust would create that orange-looking color that you would see in the water. The water main breaks that the village does experience actually is not seen on that older part of town. It's seen in the what we would consider the mid-age portion of town. So that's the water main shown in like the green, yellow, maybe even the light blue. That is true for most everyone in this area and relates back to the quality of the ductile iron pipe at that point in time. For whatever reason, they changed how they were making ductile iron pipe, and we all now have the joy of dealing with that, and we have seen higher breaks in those areas versus your old pipe has been holding up a lot better. I'm going to let Dan come up and talk a little bit more specific on the First Street water quality issues as well.
Yeah, just briefly.
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
before you start? So, just so I'm clear, the current technology of water pipe, it's some other form of ductile iron?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then do you recommend doing water main linings, typical to sewer main lining?
So water main lining is interesting. Where I would recommend water main lining is in the event that access is difficult. It's not any cost. You're not going to save cost by doing water main lining. You still have to access wherever there's a valve. You're going to have to dig down at that location. If there's a 90-degree bend, you're going to have to dig at that location. It can't make the bend. Where there's a fire hydrant, you'll have to dig down to make that connection. Service lines afterwards have to all get reinstalled. So unlike sewer lining, which has less kind of assets within the sewer, it becomes very problematic for water lining to just, unless you had like a transmission main in town where it's just a straight shot, it's not as clean as the sewer lining work, but it's very advantageous for if you had water mains in backyards, or if you were going underneath a state road, or maybe underneath the river or a creek, things along that nature. The other thing that I would consider for the village as well is a lot of your mains are sized 4-inch and smaller. So although lining would extend the life of that main, you are not necessarily increasing any sort of capacity within the system. So are there benefits for water main lining? Absolutely, but I would be very choosy on where I would locate it, because the cost savings when you start doing all those excavation pits, it ends up being almost equivalent, if not in some cases more expensive than doing open cut. I definitely wouldn't recommend it like down a neighborhood street. For sure, do open cut in that instance.
Could you define, for some people that might not know, what
Yep.
water main lining is?
Absolutely, yes. So water main lining is they basically put in a felt/resin liner that is inverted. So it stands alone outside of the pipe, and it's floppy, and you wouldn't know it's going to turn into a pipe. And that is, you have to gain access down into the main. So dig a hole, you've got to turn that main off, and they are able to invert that liner, so it kind of folds on itself down the main. They use heat, sometimes they use UV, but they use either one of those to cure that. So they're going to inflate that basically bag, inflate it, cure it, and then once it's cured, it acts as a standalone pipe. So you need a host pipe for it to work, so you need your existing main for that to work, but it acts as a new pipe. So if you had main that was constantly failing, you were having a lot of water main breaks, you could effectively line that main to reduce or eliminate those breaks, because once it's cured, it acts as an entirely new pipe. Does that?
It's really cost effective with sewer mains because
Very.
And now it totally makes sense what you just described, because the sewer main doesn't have all the connects that
Shut-offs.
right.
Yep.
So you can just like inflate this thing inside the pipe, and it's super strong, and it'll take your existing pipe, make it last another 50 years versus having to dig the whole pipe up and put a new pipe in.
So I'm in the middle there where all the red is. And with the 4-inch lines, would that make sense why I have a faucet running and then I turn on another one and I just have like no pressure? Because I know my neighbors have issues like that too. You run appliance, you turn the other one on and you're losing a lot of pressure.
I don't know if that's specifically 4-inch there. I would have to defer to Greg and Phil on that, but personally being off of a 4-inch line, yes.
And what is the recommendation for like sort of new construction? Is it not 4-inch? What is it?
It would depend on the demand, but standard, we would normally put in an 8-inch as like your baseline. So
Like new subdivision developments
Yeah.
would be 8-inch.
that's pretty normal. Helps with fire flow, helps
So like
with,
as we replace these pipes going forward, if we were going to replace the 4-inch, we would be replacing it most likely with an 8-inch.
yeah. We do work with some towns that have,
Source of it moving out, I would think, right?
yeah. I have worked with some communities that have put 4-inch back. So you can, they make the pipe, there's no reason why you can't, but my recommendation would be to put an 8-inch back, so.
Excuse me, worth mentioning too, on the lining idea concept, with some of the older mains, there's a lot of mineral buildup inside the pipe, and so all of that has to be removed to effectively insert the liner, and then it would expand and then, of course, cure, so. There's a decent amount of buildup in some of the older mains that would have to be removed, and that would certainly add cost and complexity.
Yes.
You may have a weakened pipe, and that could compromise the pipe itself, so.
It's not as straightforward as sewer lining, but I recommend sewer lining often. That is definitely the route to go when we're talking about those, so.
Okay.
Great questions, thank you.
And just a few seconds on a recent study that we performed. The residents on First Street had communicated water quality issues to village staff.
The very north end of First Street.
Yeah, the very north end where there's a terminal line where the line just ends and doesn't connect to any other part of the system. Probably a big part of why those water quality issues exist. So we, in that area, there have been auto flushers used seasonally to move water through the system to try to reduce that water age in the pipe and keep that water fresher. So we did a study to see, is there a way to stop using the auto flushers and connect that terminal line on First Street, the very north end of it, to another part of the system. We looked at a couple alternatives, and the recommended alternative from our study would be to connect the line at the end of First Street over to Second Street, go east in a couple potential different ways that would have to be explored. But if we could connect the end of the First Street line over to Second Street, it would loop the main in that area and provide increased water flow and especially increased water reliability, because we could serve that area from two different directions within the system.
It's Control L if you want full screen. I looked it up.
Oh.
I'm gonna try. Well, it helps if I hit Control instead of Alt. You taught me something new. Thank you.
Thank you, Google.
Okay. I still need my glasses, but that's fine. All right, thank you, Dan. So what I want to take a moment to emphasize is that East Dundee is no different than most of the communities in this region. Most communities are dealing with water main breaks. They're dealing with water quality issues resulting from that aging infrastructure. I would say the communities that are not are the very, very new communities that popped up in the 90s. They've got, majority of their lines are very new ductile or PVC, and so they just aren't at the age where they're seeing those problems yet. Many systems around the Chicagoland area were built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then, as I sort of alluded to when we were talking about the water main age, post-World War II, 1950s to 1970s, that's the range where we see the most water main breaks happening, because during the war, they needed the iron for the war efforts, which is what changed how they were making the ductile iron pipe. We weren't getting the same quality iron, and thus we get to enjoy the consequences of that presently.
And Mr. Pearson, what you pointed out, you lived in maybe the more central part. The part was very common throughout the whole area with the lines, the pipes in the original downtown area are those oldest. And as the community develops, they got newer lines and newer lines. And like Caitlin explained, you're seeing different issues in different parts of town, but every community in this area is seeing the same types of issues for those types of areas within their town.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is common. The other thing that I want to highlight is most communities in Illinois are dealing with lead service lines and the need to replace those. So although a mandated effort and one that creates a lot of financial strain for a community, 24% of the nation's lead service line burden falls within the state.
How's that possible?
So fun fact, because I'm full of those when it comes to lead, Galena region used to be where they mined lead, and it provided 90% of the nation's lead for the country. So when you're in that close proximity to lead and it's mining, it becomes a resource that is very available for us, and Chicago specifically very much liked using lead, and I think we felt that shift out to the burbs as well. So,
So what you're saying is there were pipes being laid elsewhere at the same time that we were laying lead pipes that weren't lead.
yes, I mean, I would say that the Chicagoland region and communities that were built in this time frame across the country were seeing more lead being used, but this region definitely saw the highest amount, and other areas were using other materials such as galvanized and or copper. So they were not using plastic back then.
Huh.
And one thing I want to note is that the American Water Works Association, AWWA, which is an association that is national and we look up to often in our industry, they release a State of the Water Industry report every year. Through that report, they noted this presently in 2026 that utilities need $2.1 to $2.4 trillion for infrastructure upgrades to get to 2050. Now that's across the nation, but we are seeing communities actively have to invest more. We're seeing the demand for those funds increase, and the competitiveness of those funds, say if you're going after IEPA loan funding, becoming more and more competitive. All right, so I want to shift gears. I'm going to move a little bit quicker through these next few slides so that we can open it up for any additional discussion. But we wanted to take the opportunity to highlight some of the projects that the village has planned and kind of when they are anticipated to happen. So at the water treatment plant, this is actually currently under design. There is an iron filter and iron exchange rehab that is going to happen at the treatment plant. This will include some control processes upgrades, so through SCADA. There will be a media replacement in the horizontal pressure filter. This is common, so the media does have a life expectancy to it. Communities are having to replace that over a set period of time. It's based off of usage, based off of the water quality coming out of the groundwater. But it is common for this media to eventually need to be replaced. And there's also going to be a filter to waste valve installation. This doesn't currently exist. It would allow for better operations at the treatment plant. So in general purpose and need, rehabilitation of the filter will not only increase efficiency of that filter, it will help with end water quality. In having new media at your iron filtration will help remove more iron from the water, which we should see better downstream effects from that as well. The estimated project cost right now is around $400,000. So compared to some of the other costs I'm going to discuss here in a moment, it's a relatively reasonable amount for this type of upgrade.
And if I can just add, the control panel and the valve were both purchasable, those two were approved at, I think, the last board meeting or the prior board meeting.
Great. The Route 68 elevated tank, also the design is underway for this. This is rehabbing the tank. This will include both cleaning and repainting of the interior and exterior of the paint, or of the tank. It will also include repainting of the tank logo. So it'll be nice to have a new East Dundee logo on the side of this, but more importantly, operationally, we want to make sure that the internal function of that tank is strong. Repainting of that tank will help extend the life of the elevated tower for years to come. So another very common sort of maintenance rehab that we see communities doing often. Estimated project cost for this is close to $1.2 million. My favorite. Lead service line replacements. So as noted earlier, Illinois adopted the new federal law. The village does technically have a 10-year window to facilitate replacements of their lead service lines. The map on the left, the pink indicates where lead presently is known within the village. Blue is copper. Black are properties that still remain unknown. The village is right now planning for roughly 330 lead water service line or galvanized service line replacements. And based off of the funding that we've requested through IEPA, the goal is to do this in 3 years instead of in 10, and looking to do this across 27, 28, and 29. Purpose, not only is this a health risk, but it is mandated by the state and federal government. And presently, the total estimated project cost across all of 330 lead service lines is $6 million. Well number 6 is planned for rehabilitation in 2027. This work will include a new well pump motor, electrical cabling, and valving. There will also be an internal inspection of the well casing and mechanical cleaning of that well casing. After the work is completed, the well will be disinfected. This is standard practice. Since we've been down into the well, we want to make sure that we perform disinfection as well to remove any sort of contaminants that could have entered. The purpose, essentially only emergency repairs have been performed on this well since it was first drilled, which is again back in 2008. I made reference to that earlier. It was put into full service back in 2019, but other than that, there's really been no additional repairs. So it is most definitely due for some additional rehabilitation since it's been in operation. Estimated project cost is roughly $660,000. There are some water main replacements planned for 2027. I will emphasize that the village is looking to also do some additional water main replacement. This is by no means the end-all be-all, but these are the locations that are presently known. This is along Prairie Lake Road that is on the far right of the map indicated in red and is roughly 800 lineal feet of 12-inch water main that's being replaced in kind with 12-inch water main. The village often sees water main breaks at this location, and so they are trying to eliminate that emergency repair work that happens. Additionally, work will be performed along Van Buren Street. This is roughly 2,000 lineal feet of 6-inch water main that is being upsized to 8-inch water main. So this is to help with some undersized main in that area. So that is, the estimated project cost is roughly $1.8 million. All right, and I want to shift gears and talk about a few additional future projects, and then we'll open this up for some questions. I know I talked about the iron filter media that's getting replaced, but one of the things that the village has also looked at doing and is working, staff is working to budget, is the iron oxidation contact tank. What this would allow, without getting into all the weeds, there's 2 different types of iron. There's ferrous iron and ferric iron. Ferrous iron is in solution, you can't see it. Ferric iron is particulate, you can actually physically see it. And so the water coming out of the ground has that ferrous iron, it is in solution. And when it's in solution, it's very, very hard to remove, even after going through the filter. By having an oxidation contact tank before those filters, it would give that water the ability to have longer contact time with some additional chemicals, and by doing so allow that ferrous iron to shift to ferric, so it's now in particulate form and can actually be captured by the filters. So the addition of this would drastically improve that iron removal. It's going to extend the life of your filter media as well, because it's not having to capture as much. The improvement ultimately is estimated to cost around $625,000. Again, the staff are looking to figure out when that's going to fit into the budget, but that is a recommendation and something they're looking to add at the treatment plant. And then I'm going to let Dan talk a little bit more about the First Street Water Main project.
Yeah, I mentioned the analysis that we did, and we came up with some alternatives to address the water quality issue along First Street by connecting to Second Street. This would be a future project for deciding on one of those alternatives, doing the design work to connect, to loop that water main, to increase the flow, to increase the reliability. It's a potentially smaller project. We think around $300,000 would get that designed and constructed to address those First Street issues.
Why, okay, can I ask a question? You said that the plan was to connect First and Second, correct?
Yeah, we looked at a few different things.
Why wouldn't you do First and Bramer, since Bramer is also a dead end?
We could, yeah, that is one of the alternatives we looked at. Yeah, Eagle Eye there. Yeah, so that's another terminal, water main at that point too. We looked at a way to connect Bramer to First and then over to Second as well. So that is one of the alternatives, and we looked at doing that a couple different ways as well.
And
Yep.
if I can add too, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've gotten the number of water quality concerns on Braemar as we have on First. Is that something accurate?
Oddly enough, it is. I mean, if you look at the map, you know, you've got a stretch going over to Braemar, and then the small stub itself up there. You know, that feeds 4, 5, maybe 6 homes total on that side. And you know, as far as why they're not seeing it, or maybe they are and have just installed a filtration or softening system in their own homes that, you know, kind of eliminate the issue. I don't know there, but the homes at the far north end of 3rd Street, I'm sorry, 1st Street, are calling exponentially more than.
Yeah. If you did First to Braemar, would that not be considered an actual loop because it goes back branches to that one inlet?
Yeah, if this was connected here, you've still got this single line here, and then what we affectionately call a lollipop in the system, rather than a true looped to the system at large.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can you direct bore that kind of pipe there? Is that how it would be done?
We could horizontal directionally drill that.
Okay.
Yeah, versus open cut. We'd have to look at the different alternatives, which one is the village most liking, talk to the residents, the homeowners in that area. It would take coordination with them, of course, to do this. All right. Great. Thanks.
All right, so one more slide. Thank you for all of your patience this evening. So what I want to emphasize here is we talked about how the village has been ramping up their budgeting for projects and water system improvements. And I want to emphasize that the village is continuing to do that. Between fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 31, we're looking at nearly $13 million that are planned for system improvements presently. That's written into the budget. We're looking to do those water improvements. So although there's a great need, the village is stepping up. They are looking to fulfill that need and budget accordingly. So it's obviously a large dollar amount, but there's plenty of projects to be had. So with that, I want to open it up to any questions, any additional thoughts, anything else we can answer.
So my area I was talking about, we had a lot of red water, iron, I'm guessing. Yeah, there, right by the park in the middle.
Okay.
It's better now with the auto flushers. Is there anything we can do? I realize it's a GPM problem with the loss of pressure. Is there anything we can do short term that would help that? Or any of these projects that we actually budgeted for, could that help that? Could we up pressure? I mean, I realize just upping pressure isn't a fix, but what can we do that would benefit the residents?
Upping pressures in some parts of the system can cause problems.
Correct, and I get that. So I'm just wondering, is there anything we can do short term, because obviously there is an issue. We've had issues there for a long time.
You know, as far as, it's not as obscenely short term, but the rehab work that we're already planning on doing to the water plant itself, I think is intended to directly help that. If that, whether that is the end all be all, it is yet to be seen, because it hasn't happened yet, but I think we're still planning on doing the contact tank work. It's been recommended by Baxter Woodman as well as Curita/Tonka. They changed names, but when the water plant was installed, the equipment manufacturer, the name of them was Tonka Water, and they have since merged and now it's Curita Water. But they also have recommended that as a way to help oxidize iron before the filter, as Caitlin was describing, to try and get as much out as we can. One of the issues that we're finding is that some of that iron is in solution and it's not being oxidized before the filter, and so it's not being removed. The product that we're using right now to oxidize the head of the filter is sodium permanganate. It's working as much as it can, but it needs more time in contact with the water and the chemicals that it's trying to oxidize, the iron and manganese, to do a better job.
Right.
And so that contact tank would really help that. What we're seeing now is the stuff that's making, the iron that's making it through the filter and through the softeners, we're then adding chlorine to the water as a disinfectant, but it's also an oxidizer. And so it goes out the door, softened and filtered, but then it also has that disinfectant with oxidizing properties as it's sitting out in the system, oxidizing the remaining iron out of solution. And so, in addition to that, with the cast iron pipes, now your neighborhood is kind of in the middle age, 50s, 60s, like there could be cast iron, there could be ductile. We definitely see both. It's not like unfortunately our records are not ridiculously thorough where we say Howard is all cast and King is all ductile or anything like that, but both issues are certainly contributing to that. Again, the rehab work is already in the works. That's about as fast as we're going to get anything to be done. The contact tank, although it's not a cheap endeavor, I don't feel like it's a ridiculously in-depth thing. It's literally just putting a tank with baffles in it in the plant and allowing the water to go slowly through it and then into the filter system that we already have. Replacing the water main, you do, I believe, there was just pulling the map up.
Is that the 400?
Had a 4-inch main in that area. You're looking at water main in backyards, which I suppose doesn't really matter where the main is run.
Yeah, I know they're in the backyards.
Definitely in an area where there is 4-inch.
All right.
Yeah. 4-inch directly behind you, 4-inch next to you, 4-inch on backyards of Rayburn, 4-inch on backyards of Crestwood, 4-inch on backyards of Kimberly and Aberdeen.
Yeah.
So pretty much the whole neighborhood there
It's 4-inch.
is 4-inch.
In terms of pressure, outside of obviously increasing the main size, which would be the most viable way to increase that pressure, there's potential, like, there's a thing called water pigging. It's an interesting term, but yeah. Whether they use, sometimes they can use like an ice slurry, other times they use like a clog or plug that fits just within the limits of that water main. Those older mains have what's called tuberculation most likely built up. That's just long-term sediment. It's just the iron breaking down, and that can reduce the cross-sectional area of the pipe. So by doing things like ice pigging or just pigging of the water main, it would help remove that, increase your cross-sectional area back closer to the 4-inch that it was, which could help increase water pressure, but it's not a magic kind of piece to that, so.
So, back to the orange-red water. I mean, that is the number one complaint. I mean, it's very jarring.
Yep,
Frankly, people get scared when they see it.
sure.
Are we saying that's all coming from the well, or is it coming from the service lines themselves?
It's a blend. So it is your groundwater, right? So groundwater has iron, it has magnesium, like all of that is very natural to have from groundwater. And you've got both a shallow and a deep well, so like all of this is normal to come out of water. So you're going to see that out in the distribution system, but then you also have older mains on top of that, so that's going to cause that iron to also show up.
It can be either.
Yeah, and it's probably a combination of both,
And
but
this ionization system, is that only going to affect what we take out of the ground, or is it going to also affect that stuff downstream?
it's going to inadvertently impact both. So by removing more iron at the water treatment plant, you're putting less iron out into the system, right? So residents should see a reduction in that color with all of this treatment plant work, but also you still have the older main. So is it gonna absolutely go away? I'm not gonna say like by doing this, you're never gonna see orange water again. That would be false, but there should be a noticeable improvement, particularly with that contact tank. That will be very, very helpful for the village.
Do you know on our wells what aquifers they're tapping into?
I know that there are people who do know.
Do you know if they're monitoring them for the health of those aquifers? Like at IML 2 years ago, they mentioned, I think it was Champaign, was doing a lot of drone studies where they're actually shooting down radar to like tell the levels of them, and they were quite worried about certain ones depleting because they take so long to refill. So asking that because we're right next door to Hoffman Estates where Lake Michigan water stops, and we could extend it in either as secondary or primary with our wells being secondary. Is that something you've looked at that you would recommend one way or the other?
I will say that we've gone through that process for other communities. It is extensive, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through. I'm not saying it's not something the village couldn't consider by any means, but it is not just put a connecting pipe in the ground. There's a lot of regulatory requirements that need to happen. The city of Joliet is in the process of making that type of connection, and they've had to replace like 90% of their water main in order to prove you have to have a certain amount of water loss, and it can't exceed a specific amount in your system. And if you cannot get it reduced down to that set percentage, like there's a lot of work that has to go into making sure that you're able to meet that. And there's lots of hoops to jump through. So I'm not saying it's not an option. In terms of groundwater, with your proximity to the river, your shallow well is refilled relatively quickly. And there is a deep well as well, no pun intended. And that is not immediately in any sort of danger for getting reduced too quickly. There are a lot of studies that are happening with groundwater, and is there any concerns? But with our vicinity to Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes in general, across the country, we have probably the least concern. Is there no concern? I wouldn't say that there's not no concern, but I haven't heard of anything presently. Now, whenever we get into the summer, there's always talk about it, but.
But someone is monitoring
Yes.
those for the depth to make sure they're not drying out.
That is actively monitored, correct.
I mean, speaking of that, St. Charles recently said that they're like 500,000 gallons a day short of water, or they are going to be soon. Do we know what causes that? Like, why is it a surprise? And why wouldn't it be a surprise for us someday?
It's probably, it could be a blend of things. It could be the production of their existing wells. So if you're not exercising those wells correctly, if you're not, a well, depending on what sort of ground it's going through, so it's pulling water through the ground, right? So if you're pulling water through limestone or through gravel, that water has particulate in it, and it can naturally clog the area that you're pulling the water to. So the production of their existing wells could be problematic. They might need to drill new wells, or they might need to exercise those existing wells to help relieve that particulate that builds up. I'm not familiar with their particular problems.
So it could be that they just haven't done that rehabilitation that we are recommending on.
Yeah, or they've had a lot of growth there. They might need to,
It's usually projected growth.
yeah,
Mm.
they might also need an additional well to support that growth. So without knowing their specific cause,
that's
it
fine.
doesn't immediately make me think the groundwater level is a concern. So,
And to be a little more detailed, we do have our two wells. Our shallow well is 268 feet approximately. The deep one is 1,335 feet. Both, so water comes up, it comes in and it's blended 50-50 into the treatment plant.
So, and that deep well is drilled over 1,000 feet, and I believe it's only set actually in the 800-foot range. So
Oh, so we can go
It could
deeper.
go deeper.
if we had to, I believe that is an option. Again, that well has only been actually online in use since 2019. It's not been something we've needed to consider at all, so I believe it to be a possible, help if that was gonna need to be the case, but, right now, I don't think that's really something we need to look into. Both of our wells have shown steady curves as far as the modeling that's been done with our preventative maintenance, work. We just had that done a month ago.
Oh, maybe the maintenance. I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
so,
well, if I was rehabilitated.
yeah, no. So we're, in addition to that, we're doing, with our well contractor, they come in annually and run a test on all of our wells. They just run them to waste, and then while they're running, they test against different pressures that we don't even experience, because when we pump the water, it goes into the system, and the system is generally always at the same, within a very small pressure range. They can then artificially, force the valve closed and say, how is this well gonna run against extreme head pressure that our system would never produce? Is it still able to run? Is the motor showing, any issues on the electrical side? They test the motor and the windings and everything against factory specs and say, this pump is producing the same amount of water, but the amp draw is, creeping up a little bit at a time, maybe something to look at in the near future. Or it could say, which it has not, you're double the amps, like something's wrong, this motor is not gonna make it to, August. That's not what they said. But the point is, we're running these tests as a preventative maintenance, so that way we can not be in that situation where we can say, look, the well levels are dropping a little bit every year, the amp draw is a little bit higher every year, the flow out of the pump is a little bit less every year. We have this data, we know that something is coming, and we can plan for it. We're also a part of, Phil's got it pulled up on a computer, I don't know if you'd be able to see it, but King County is, in conjunction with the state of Illinois, part of King County Shallow Groundwater Monitoring, Shallow Groundwater Sustainability Group. That has been an ongoing thing. We submit, they are more interested in shallow wells. As Caitlin mentioned, they fluctuate more with, drought and rainfall and stuff, so they are focusing their efforts there. We have submitted our water levels and pumping and static levels to them, and they have got data available that I do not have readily right now, but some of it is just like not ready yet, even whether I wanted to get it. Some of it we can get a hold of and get you some of that. Again, that's shallow well only. The deep wells are just a little bit less affected on a regular basis. So there are eyes on it, and right now we are thankfully not in a position to be
I guess
nervous for that.
I guess when they end up publishing their report, if you can feed back to us, since this is now top of mind.
Sure.
That would be really great. I had a question on the amount of, obviously, the chunk of change we're talking about here over the next 5 years, and how does that compare to what we have spent on maintenance and everything else? And would this be added on top of the maintenance that we have spent and we have budgeted for over the last 5 years? So are we looking at like 100% increase on this? Are we looking at 150% increase? Are we looking at 50? Are we looking at 30 compared to what we've budgeted in the past?
I would say substantially more. So on this particular table up here, the very bottom line of maintenance operations, the 600.
Oh, you got that in there.
That's really kind of our
Baseline?
daily, weekly, monthly operating maintenance expenditures. So that would be on a water system only. So this is really only water. Right? I pulled out the years, what we would probably spend just maintaining
Okay.
our water systems.
And that's similar to what we've tracked over the last 5 years.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
And then how does this compare to our water rates, and are our water rates in line to be able to support these improvements and these needs?
So, great question. Bachelor Woodman have, last year conducted a water and sewer rate study for us. Based on our operating and capital needs on the water and sewer side of our water and sewer world, we had approved a 5% increase on both the water and sewer rates. The rate study recommended substantially higher increases to, and it certainly hasn't been updated to accommodate the $12+ million 5-year future coming our way, but the substantial increases, I think it may have been over double that, it may have been over 10% as I recall, rate increases, but we
Yeah.
felt as a staff and as an organization that was not where we
This,
wanted to go at this point in time.
the majority of this was not in the view of that rate study.
Some of this was, but not all
Okay.
of this, correct. So we didn't look, I'm trying to think here, our water main replacement projects were less than 3.5 million, for example. I'm trying to think, I think we did contemplate most of the lead service line replacements. So I would say most of what's up there now was contemplated for,
Okay.
but.
I think it was. I think it was more than 10 million, if I remember correctly, that we were thinking at that time. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason we wanted to do this discussion now, is we're going to start talking about the budget in the coming months, and we're going to have to revisit the water rates, and we're going to have to make decisions about whether we want to increase water rates or supplement these infrastructure projects with other revenue. So that would be a policy decision for the board coming forward, but this will give a broad overview of sort of the investment that's needed to not just maintain but improve, and how we're trying to stabilize going forward. But Matt's not here, and he had a question that I have to ask for him. It is, what is our water loss rate? You brought it up earlier, but how much do we pump versus how much do we bill for? So how much is lost in the system, like drains or is leaking?
Flushes out, leaks, water injuries.
Question.
Yeah, there's no water system in the world that's 100% watertight. So every system has a little bit of leakage through joints, cracks.
What's
breaks.
average and where are we at with it?
There's really no average. It depends on so many factors, an age of system and type of material, and even soil conditions against those pipes. We've seen 50% to single digits in different parts of the state.
See,
I do have a rough estimate. We've, based on our metering and our billing, estimated water loss for water main breaks, hydrant flushing, fire department use. Obviously, they gotta do their thing, and when they're in the heat of the moment, they are not worried about how much water they're using, and I wouldn't expect that to be. Again, I can't measure the water accurately. Out of water main breaks, there are rough estimate calculators as far as what's your pressure in the area, how big was the crack, was it all the way around the pipe, was it a half-inch hole, was it a 3-inch hole, and it gives you estimates, but the estimates are only as good as the information you have. And if the water was surfacing for 3 hours, we can estimate 3 hours, but if it broke 3 days ago and didn't surface until 3 hours ago, we'll never be able to account for all that. Currently, we're at a rough estimate of 16% unaccounted for water.
Pretty good.
That is really
It's,
good.
I was gonna say, it's,
Really good.
it's not as good as we would like to be, just as a general statement, but it certainly could be worse.
Yeah, I mean, the communities that are doing 50% are, like, that's the stuff that keeps you up at night.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And there have been years where we were higher for sure, and obviously we're all here discussing the water quality issues, and that has prompted additional flushing, which then throws these numbers out of whack. We've had, 2025, we had 7 water main breaks. I don't like to talk about them all out, but I think the highest we've had is 13 in a year. I run a number.
12.
But the year before, so 25, we had 7. I think the year before we only had 4. So it really goes up and down. Like Dan mentioned, the soil conditions, and again, we're talking about 100-year-old cast iron pipe down here in the flats. The soil conditions here, being so close to the river and the basin, it's very sandy. When we do have pressure fluctuations or ground movement, the sand allows for that pipe to move. And we see very small amount of water main breaks in this area. In the terrace, we've got ductile iron pipe, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is in comparison to cast, more flexible-ish, right, as much as iron can be. But that whole neighborhood was backfilled with whatever they pulled out of the ground, and all the boulders, I mean, basketball size and larger, are right up against the pipe. More often than not, we dig a water main break, and very close to the crack, we find a boulder with rust stains all over it because the water was shooting out right on the side of it, and we can say that's what caused it. You know, something moved, the ground moved, it was a hard freeze or a quick thaw, and you know, that's what caused it. So, as far as the water loss goes, you know, I agree, we certainly could be worse than I would have.
It's a good
As,
number.
as much, heartfelt feeling as I could for a town that had a report they were in a 50% range.
And
Is that in the range of what Lake Michigan water would say is a good range, or do you know what that target
do you
would?
know what their cutoff is?
I'm not,
I
Sure,
either
if
have
it's-
20 or 10 in my head, and I don't know.
it's definitely not 10.
Okay.
Yeah,
It might be
it's
20.
more like 20. Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to think what Billy has facing right now. And,
We're also a small system too, so.
So towns that pull from Lake Michigan are, they're under a little more of a strict situation that they're buying water from somebody who has to account for it a little more. We're making our own, pumping our own. Yes, it could potentially be more efficient, but we don't have to pay somebody else more for that lost water. Obviously, we're paying, you know, ComEd to pump it or whatever, but I believe they do require a little lower number. We are, in addition to budgeting and accounting for some of that stuff, we budgeted annually this year for $12,000 for a citywide leak survey. The company will come and use amplified headphones. They put essentially magnet tied to the amplifier on their waist with headphones on fire hydrants, B-boxes, valve boxes, valve nuts. If we can get down to a water main inside of a vault, they'll drop it right on the water main pipe, and they can hear the water flowing through the pipe. When there's nothing wrong, it's just kind of a hum. When there's something wrong, it is a screaming. Kind of sounds like 1980s. I don't have good reception on my TV screeching sound, and you can hear the water rushing through a small crack, and so then they correlate it sometimes by just going to the next valve, and you know this one's louder, so we're getting closer. The next one's quieter, so we know it's in between the two. But then they have computerized, you know, devices that they hook up, valve over here, and then it can tell how far away from each device or machine that sound is. And so then they say, all right, it's 75 feet from this one, 50 feet from this one, you're plus or minus in this. They'll put a little box on the ground, we dig, and more often than not, it's within the estimation at least. I mean, they may not be within, you know, an inch or whatever. That has been a big help. They have assisted us in finding some leaks that we would never otherwise have found because they didn't come to the surface. So that is a huge help. We've got water meters, are fully radio capable, other than 2 or 3 village-owned ones that are not really worth the effort. And we're now on to the larger commercial meters that started the program back in 2005, 2006. I mean, 20 years is a decent time for a water meter, let alone one that is technologically no longer advanced. And we have seen issues with them reading correctly, as well as, for whatever reason, our current billing system is not a huge fan of those type of meters. They actually have two different heads on the same meter. There's a flow device inside that during low flow situations, say you've got an office where they work 24 hours, but the overnight hours are just a couple people, and so they flush the toilet, wash their hands, and they're only using, 5 gallons a minute. So the water's going through a small water meter on the side, and it's recording. That meter looks literally just like all the ones in your home. But then during the day, whatever they're producing requires, I don't know, 80 gallons a minute for cooling of some machinery, say. Well, the larger meter then valve opens and allows for that heavier flow to go through. And so now you're actually reading two different meters on the same line at the same address, and then you do the math for two different meters and send them one bill. Our water billing service is fully capable of doing that, but they far, in a way, outweigh the billing problems of those type of meters compared to the single head meters, aside from their age and general accuracy, lacking of accuracy, I suppose, and the billing problems. Those are the ones we're attacking now to replace, and it'll help our billing, it'll help our water loss, and help our sanity in the meter reading department.
So I just looked up what Joliet's facing, and Caitlin was right as usual. Joliet's been asked to get to less than 10% water loss by 2030.
Hmm. Any more questions, board?
One more on PFAS. Since that's competitive, and I thought I heard that the 2027 standards are higher than when we did our testing before. Did we test at the same standards as what are being asked to be tested at for 2027? Just to get ahead of, if it's competitive, to get funding to remediate.
I don't know.
They know that according to that testing.
Yeah,
It,
they just said, let me know when we can come in, and they came in and took samples and
Yes,
made
we
off with
don't
them and
know.
tested. I mean, we have access to the results, but being that they were like non-detect, it wasn't.
with the recent adoption at WaterCon, which is our state kind of water conference, IEPA noted that they're in the process of sending out notices to communities on like next steps and what actions they need to take. So I imagine that we'll be seeing that additional guidance from the state here in the next month or two in terms of, are they going to look at that 2021 testing as acceptable, or do we need to take additional steps?
Yeah, just as a note to staff, if there is ways we can get ahead of other communities, because I feel like the lead service line grant funding, the sooner you file for it, the sooner you get it. So
I will say that all funding is becoming incredibly competitive, so,
yes, but that's all.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And that takes us to our final discussion with fireworks. Caleb, are you running that?
Yeah, I can present.
Are you? Is he?
You can. It's good for him.
Builds character.
Definitely needed. Well, so what I would present is in the memo, but I definitely can answer any questions that you may have in about this topic.
We didn't really have any like formal presentation, but
Yeah.
there has been a lot of discussion happening around this topic, so we want to get some feedback from the board and direction on how to move forward, so.
I guess my question, we don't put on fireworks shows. Like,
We didn't pay for it.
why,
We can regulate it though.
is that what we're asking?
We
Is
do,
we
we
wanna
do
ban?
do
But we allow the permits,
so
right?
annually, Bandito Barney's has funded the St. Patrick's Day fireworks. And those have historically been put off on the bridge, which is the request to no longer do that off the bridge. So in the future, if the village does want to support that request from the local business who provides that amenity like free of charge, do we want to move it to a different location in town, or do we want to pivot and start thinking about potentially suggesting an alternative like the drone shows, or
I guess
what do you
it all
think?
depends on the cost. Did you ever look into the drone shows? Are they comparable to a fireworks show?
No, they're way more expensive.
They're more expensive. So in the memo, there is a list of
Right.
communities that do it, and it's wide ranging depending on how many drones you have in the show and, you know, other factors like that.
Well,
But-
West Dundee didn't want it, and we've had people come in and say that they didn't want it over the river just because of the contamination into the river, right?
That's one,
Yeah.
probably the major reason. I think the other is sound, frightening everyone's dogs or veterans who have PTSD, and but mostly I think all of that stuff landing in the river is the main reason, and moving it not on the river, somewhere
Like
else.
Fireman's
So,
Park. where
so
it was-
like, yeah, do we have another location?
Fireman's Park, I thought, didn't we do, or weren't they done?
They did back in the day when standards had changed, so it's still possible, but you're gonna lower your shell size to, you know, what people are going on the Fourth of July nonetheless. The bigger the diameter, the more radius you need. So I think the last fireworks show they had there in the coast when, a long time ago.
Or the other park that's up by you?
Say again, that park?
Or the other park that's up by you?
Yeah.
It still doesn't negate, I mean, that solves one problem with it polluting the river, but it's still an issue with animals, PTSD folks, that kind of thing. So the health and welfare of some of our residents. But yeah, drone shows are very expensive by comparison.
And that's something to factor in if we don't pay currently for the fireworks, and then we go from not paying for the fireworks to switching, and then maybe that person doesn't want to pay for drone show, and now we have a full
Right.
price of the drone show on us, which doesn't seem great.
Right.
Which we don't have to do.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people still like the fireworks shows. I think a lot of people still like the fireworks shows. They do get a good gathering of people, so
They do.
to me, why not let us do it? We're not paying for it.
I'll keep pondering new other locations.
Yeah, there's like out past 25 where there's a lot of open lots that aren't used, not near residential as much. Maybe there's,
Yeah, can we do something out near Clody or Colombo
Yeah.
or whatever, if they get them involved?
Maybe. Dundee Township would let us use their cemetery grounds.
that is an idea.
Well, are we gonna allow it? Sure, we can allow it, but it's gonna be on whoever that's gonna pay for it, for them to figure out where they're gonna do it. And they can work with the village, and they can work with the fire department and figure it out.
I guess the question is, are we aligned with moving it off the river and committing to finding another place for future ones beyond 4th of July 2026?
Do we know any other communities on the river that stopped doing it? Or are doing it still?
I don't know that many were, because most of them are much larger and have alternate locations.
We have the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of it not being over the river for the pollution reasons, and exploring other locations to see if we have some viable ones where there's room to gather, distance from residential and not in a waterway.
I also think it's a benefit to not have to get another town involved each time,
Yeah.
where it's just
Yeah.
our thing.
Right.
We got Hager parking lot. Too soon?
Oh,
Go ahead.
good idea.
Let that be a part of it.
That'd be perfect for your patch. we have a consensus, yeah, we won't do it over the river, and if they can find another location, we're for it.
Sounds
And if somebody wants to pay for a drone show, pay for a drone show.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll table for that.
All right, thank you.
All right, that brings us to reports. Andy, trustee Sauter,
No report.
trustee Savion,
No report.
trustee Kuhn.
So at QuadCom, we had the meeting. You know, Carpentersville is pulling out of QuadCom, which is going to likely force us to either, pull out as well, or quite possibly we will have our rates increase due to the fact that Carpentersville was, a large portion of, paying for the services. Additionally, we approved a consultant fee to, Carpentersville has done their research into what they say is going to be beneficial to them. They've had all the time in the world to do that because they decided some time ago that they were going to do this. And now they've left all the other communities with a very small window to figure out what we're going to do. And to get the best information possible, we're trying to hire a consultant to figure out what the actual cost savings might be, consolidating with another agency, or maybe it's better to stay with QuadCom. Trying to answer those questions as quickly as possible. And I don't really have anything, to add to that, other than I just wanted to let you all know what's going on.
You got anything to add on that, chief?
He summarized it well.
Okay.
We look forward to your recommendation.
I know.
All right, trustee Mahoney?
Summer events are in full swing as of last Thursday. I want to thank Phil's crew and the whole Public Works team on everything they did. Depot looks great with the bunting and the painted chair and even the fire hydrant. So thank you to that team. We have, the setup seemed to be pretty good. We had some minor sound system issues that we uncovered and discussed as far as placing all that. And we'll talk to Catherine about that. And I don't think you guys necessarily do that. You guys don't set up the stage. The people that we're renting it from sets up the stage, right? Yeah, but just all the other stuff. Record number of vendors, 13 vendors, 3 new vendors.
A lot of people.
Yeah, tons of people, and awesome weather on top of it all. So I think it's really great. One of the things, because we are charging the vendors, a nominal fee for attending every event, for the hookups and the tents and that kind of thing. If we can make sure that we're tracking the hours that Public Works is spending a little bit more closely on setup for the events, cleanup for the events, supporting the events, so that we can make sure that, this kind of fee that we pulled out of the air makes sense, right? Or that we can, kind of bump it up against what we actually charge. That would be really, really helpful. I know it's been kind of loosey-goosey and not necessarily tracked in the past, but if we could start doing it this year, that'd be great.
I think we have also this year, between Catherine and Mark and Pete and I, have done a little better job preparing what each event is gonna look like, and trying to keep them consistent, like all the Thursdays should be 99%
I noticed
this. And so that tracking will be, I think, a little bit easier to say, the vendor tents, we're gonna say, we're gonna set up, you know, first, or it's starting at 1 PM, and we can say it took, whatever,
Great,
3 guys, 1 hour, and whatever our number will be, so.
great, awesome.
Shouldn't be too crazy of an ask.
Okay, it's not a big ask then.
No,
All right.
we'll be
then-
out there either way.
Okay, then this Thursday is the first evening depot market from 4 to 8. It's a test, so we've got 2 of them this year, so come on out if you want to buy some things and talk to people and listen to some music.
Twilight Market.
Sorry,
Yeah,
what day
the
was
Twilight-
that?
Thursday.
This Thursday.
Starts at 4 o'clock.
And then next week, we have Motor Mondays followed by Wine Down Wednesday next week. So we are definitely in full swing with all that. Looking forward to any of your feedback that you have with any events or any issues with us. Just let the committee know when you're setting things up. So thanks again on all that. I think with that, that's all I have.
Okay, Phil, any report?
The only report that I have is our standpipe watering project is scheduled to start on Monday.
Nice.
How long is that gonna take?
A week, possibly 2. And that same week, that Joe's coming from Barrington Avenue resurfacing is scheduled to start next week as well, so. Barrington Avenue will be busy in
See the lines,
a few weeks.
the signs, yeah.
All right.
I did see that nice graphic that was made. I don't know who made that for the Barrington Road resurfacing. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? There was, I saw it on Facebook.
In Depot Live?
Oh, it's probably Stellar Edge.
Okay. Did we post that to the residents that live on Barrington maybe? Or are we informing
Yeah,
them?
how we inform the residents, you know.
Are you talking about this?
Yes.
I had that made. I had AI make it. ChatGPT made
So
that.
can we like print that and put it on people's like doors or something? I don't know. People aren't always on.
We can certainly try.
People aren't always.
Are you
reading.
flashing back to Water Street,
I did get a lot.
resurfacing and complaints from
I'm just.
people?
Just a
No,
thought.
no,
Just a
it's-
thought. You know.
We did
Oh, we did already. Well, thank you.
Done.
Thank you.
Okay. Joe?
Still on Barrington Avenue, I talked to the contractor, and he would like to push it back a week to get out of the way of the initial work.
Okay.
So 15.
Just so there's not so much.
Good update.
To start.
Now I gotta update it. There's another 30 seconds.
That's why we always say weather permitting, that's our secret.
Anything else?
That's it.
Chief?
That'll work.
Give a report. Ready?
The state of Illinois legislative session has ended. A couple of things for you to know. You will be getting our client alert on e-bikes and e-scooters coming out soon on the legislation that was passed. The bill legislation where there was discussion of preempting home rule for certain zoning density requirements and impact fees was not voted upon, so will to be continued if they pick that up in the veto session. So that's it.
Was any part of that? Okay.
Okay. Erica?
Just piggybacking off of the budget being passed in the wee hours of the morn. Happy to say that Suzanne Ness got us $400,000 for the soundstage project. So that is a huge deal, very appreciative, and that will definitely let us get some nice sound systems.
She's been very
How about
active.
we just pay for the thing? Like we could use that to pay for the structure.
We will use it to pay for the structure, we have to use it
We don't have the
in
money
the
for
next
that.
year or two,
Yeah,
so.
all right, and then I have no report. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Actually, we'd like to adjourn and then to executive session, close the public and media under the provisions of the Illinois Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120/2C1 personal and legal counsel.
And then adjourn from there.
And then we'll adjourn from that. We won't be returning to open session. Second. So
Second.
there's
second by Tricia.
Yeah.
Yeah, motion by trustee Mahoney, second by trustee Savia. Okay, we can just do a roll call.
Trustee Sauter,
Yes.
trustee Saviano,
Yes.
trustee Coonsey,
Yes.
trustee Mahoney,
Yes.
and, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
All right.